ago, you were sitting here
Yes, I
with
was.
Sharon Fosmek.
Yes, I
as
was
it happened.
very nervous.
I know, you look so different. It's amazing, like the difference in 1 year.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lovely example for everybody else as well, how your life can transform in a year. Just take me a little bit through the journey of where you were at last year and where you're at this year. I think you just funded your 100th company.
That's right, yeah. So 2.5 years ago, we started Backstage officially. So started making our first investments in women, people of color, and LGBT founders. When I met you last year, we would have been at about 50 companies, which is crazy. You know, that's amazing already. But I was definitely just a couple of months in to being able to speak in public. I had debilitating fear of speaking in public for my whole life. And March of that year, I started working on it. And before I came out last time, my friend tried to say something to me. Diane tried to say something to me, and I just put my hand up to her. I said, I can't do it, no. But we would have been there, would have been on our second fund, smaller fund, and struggling. And probably at around maybe 6 or 7 people, but mostly part-time on our team.
That's what I'm
Yeah, yeah. And so in the last year, we've reached 100 companies that we've invested in. Yes. And made some announcements, including a new fund that we've launched that's going to be investing $1 million at a time into companies that are led by Black women, mostly in the U.S. And so we made that announcement a few weeks ago. Lots of people have joined our journey and sort of pay attention to what we're doing. We had a whole series on a podcast called Gimlet. GimletMedia.com. They did a full series, 6-part series on us. And I'd like to say that the majority of our team is actually here. So it'd be awesome if y'all would stand up. This is like most of our Backstage team.
Woo!
It's so cool. I love that.
And your mom.
And my mom is here. Yay. Hey, Mom. Arlene Sims, that's her name. People have been calling her Arlen's mom, but she's Arlene Sims. She flew in from Houston. So yeah, a lot has happened. I still watch General Hospital every single weekday. I still drink too much Diet Coke, and I still peel string cheese instead of bite into it, ladies in the back. Anyway, it's a whole story.
But otherwise, it's progress.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot of, there's a lot of headlines, a lot of stuff's been going on.
And to get to that team there, how did all this happen? And how easy was it to build the team? Because it's quite specific what you're trying to do. You're trying to hit a part of the market that was just being ignored.
Yeah, it never was easy, not once, and still is not easy. That word I'm really afraid of because none of this has been easy. Everyone that works at Backstage, for the most part, it's been first they volunteered their time, then they worked with us part-time, paid, and then we kind of revved up to can we afford them, and then but they were all they all kind of found their way to Backstage, which I think is really awesome. But then it was like, I gotta have them because they're so amazing. And so every single person, every time we go and get into a room together, we just have the best time because we're just so grateful that we found each other and that we work so well together. And yeah, none of this has been easy. We did start a studio a few months ago, and we had a really great investor named Holly Laveau, who lives in Portland. She backed a lot of our operations to say, hey, I love what you're doing. Let's just do more of this and get more of this done, whatever it takes. So that was like a turning point for us to really to solidify this team, but it's never gotten easier.
No, it never does. It's your story. It's a bit like Inspirefest, actually.
Yeah, people think that you're doing it and it's okay, you're there, but no, it's the reason Inspirefest happens every year is because you work on it all year long, right?
Yeah.
That's what when people see the headlines at Backstage. That's after so much work.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit, just for people who weren't here last year or people who have not read the Wall Street Journal and just about everywhere you've appeared since.
You might notice me from the Wall Street Journal.
But seriously, for those who may not know,
Yes.
I mean, talk a little bit about the philosophy behind Backstage Capital. I know this specific fund, the most recent fund, is Black women, but it's wider than that.
It is. So a few years ago, I noticed as an outsider to Silicon Valley and to any tech ecosystem that there was a lot more money going to straight white men. And I noticed it because I was working with a lot of founders and just helping them on little projects that because I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of something. And then when I noticed that kind of in my life, I also started reading about it. Like, oh, wow, like the actual stats are crazy. Like 90+% goes to one group of people. And by the way, that would have been crazy no matter what that group of people was.
Absolutely.
It wasn't picking on white guys, but it was just very odd that any amount of money is all going to one group of people when you're talking about the most innovative and risk-taking slice of an asset class. It made no sense to me. So then I set out to start a fund or put together some money for people who are everything else, like everything else that's getting sort of ignored in the U.S. And I've been all over the place, and it happens all throughout the U.S. I think what a lot of people may not get, because people in the U.S. don't get this, is that it's not just about California, it's not just about New York or the main cities. There's so much going on in these smaller cities and then these big cities that are, they call them the flyover states and all of that. There's so much cool stuff going on, and it probably feels like the way you feel in Dublin is maybe how people feel in Chicago or Detroit or Miami. It's like we're doing so much here. There's so much more that can be done, and it's not about necessarily what has happened, it's about what could happen.
Oh, I like it, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so much more about the future. And the types of companies that you guys have ended up investing in. Give me an example. I mean, I'm certainly not going to ask you for a favorite.
No, don't do that, because I don't have a favorite. They're all really great. There's, even ones that go through the toughest struggles we love. And, one that I think is really cool to talk about here is called Airfordable. If you go to Airfordable online, you can purchase plane tickets and put it on something called layaway. And I know about layaway because I grew up with layaway, but if you don't know what layaway is you put a little bit of money down on something that you want, like a TV or something, and you pay over installments until you get it. So it's a little bit like, it's not credit because you're just paying it little by little and not getting into some sort of debt. And so they did this for airplane or airline tickets. And so I think if you're a college student and you live far from home and you want to go back and you don't necessarily have like the money that you need all up front, but you want to hold that price of the same price that you lock in at an earlier date, and you can pay it over time. And so that's like I really love that one because it just has so many possibilities, and they do really well.
Yeah, I was just going to say it could be used for just about anything. And I'm thinking like when there's big festivals here in Ireland, kids
100%.
pay for the ticket in installments.
Yeah.
Who has that kind of money when you're that age?
Yeah, and the thing is, like something like that is so interesting to me. It's a black woman and a black man who are running it. They still have to answer. They make I'm not gonna say what they make, but they do really well.
Yeah.
And it's working, right? And they still have to answer these silly questions in investor meetings. So we're trying to be like the little bit of buffering from that.
Yeah.
Let's skip all this other stuff that you have to go through and answer and ask and be asked. And let's just get down to your company.
And I'm really curious to ask you, because I haven't had a chance to ask you personally. I mean, do you celebrate the fact that you're now quite celebrated as being black, a woman, gay, and a venture capitalist?
Who'd have thunk?
I know, it's pretty unique.
Do I celebrate the fact that I'm...
That people make a fuss about that element, or do you start getting frustrated that, you're actually a really interesting human being, without all of
I'm pretty interested.
those descriptions?
It's about what it represents.
Yeah.
And what I see it representing is some people say, now I can do that. Now I can do something. And they want to start something. That's my favorite thing to hear. I heard that yesterday. I was talking to someone, I think it was a white guy. And he's like, I think it was because
they are here.
He was like, there's some here, right? He was like, I just want to start something. because heard you speak. Like I want to start something.
Yeah.
And like that to me is like the coolest thing. I love things that catalyze, and I think a lot of that is about representation. I don't know of a queer Black woman working in like investment that I could have looked to, and I'm sure
You had no role
and
models.
yeah,
That's
now
specific.
there's now they exist, but I love that idea. So no, I enjoy it.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that, actually, because I talk to people and they're saying, I never want to talk about that fact again, that I'm different or that I'm, from the margins. I think in a funny way, until there's more of you, you kind of have the responsibility.
I don't mind it. So I actually like it more than it being about me as Arlan. Like I like, yeah, I'm Black. I'm really proud of that. Yeah, I'm gay. I'm really proud of that. I like bring more attention to that all day.
Yeah, good. Sure. I'm very, very happy to hear that. And in fact, we're going to be meeting some of the rest of the team for that very, very reason, is that you're not one of those people who tends to put yourself forward on your own.
Yeah.
In fact, I had to practically beg you to speak last year. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember that.
You were like, I don't really do speaking.
Things have changed. You created a monster.
I know. I blame myself. I do. I've been following you on Twitter all year, and I mean, how many talks did you give this year?
I mean, how many did I give this week? Like, I think there's a certain amount of time, so I don't say yes to everything, and I think it's very strategic, and I also think there's a certain amount of time. I don't take for granted anything. So I think while I can do it, I want to do it, right? Like while you have the voice and the attention, if you have the spotlight and you can deflect some of that onto other people, why not do it, right?